Okay, so the Freedom Cell idea came to me in 2014. I've been an activist for liberty and truth and researching conspiracies and libertarianism since 2012. And I spent several years doing political activism, starting with the Ron Paul campaign. Even before that, did some ACLU stuff on college campus. And I had such an admiration for freedom, and I so strongly desired a genuinely free society, not a half measure, not even minarchism or a limited constitutional government, which would definitely be preferable than what we have now. I want total freedom where people can live their lives according to their own ends. So I started thinking, what does that look like? I was so dissatisfied with the political activism. There's an organization that I helped to found, Texans for Accountable Government, in 2008 it was. And that group is still around to this day, focused a lot about privacy, civil liberties, police accountability. And we had some victories, what would seem like victories. For example, the National Highway and Traffic Safety Administration was going to give federal grant money to the Austin Police Department to train them as phlebotomists to do blood withdrawals on the side of the road if they pull you over and suspect you of DWI. So we fought back on that. We dressed up as vampire cops and paraded around downtown into this cool political theater. And we got a resolution introduced at the local level that would have stopped that from happening, stopped them from being trained. Well, at the 11th hour, the city attorney's like, no, this isn't legal because there's a state law that says law enforcement shall use all lawful means. So we can't take away their lawful means because this isn't illegal, therefore it's lawful. Really what that law means is that they should use only lawful means. They shouldn't use illegal means to carry out their duties. So they kind of gutted it. But at the end of the day, we stopped the police officers from being trained as phlebotomists. They just got the phlebotomists to do the blood withdrawal in their little mobile DWI testing center. And so that may have seemed like a victory, but in reality, it wasn't any steps forward towards more freedom in our lives. We were simply slowing the growth of tyranny. So in all the time and energy, resources, money it took to take this little baby step, not forward, it was just slowing. Instead of 4 steps backward, it was 2. That wasn't satisfying for me. So I started thinking and exploring, what can we do? And along this time, I was getting into alternative institutions. Before cryptocurrency, mother, my kids and I would go to farmers markets and encourage the vendors to accept silver dimes in exchange for their goods, right? And we had like 120 chickens at one point. We would offer chickens for $10 a dozen. And then that silver dime was like $2. And we're like, maybe we'll back away from this. Occasionally we'd come across a vendor that would be like, oh, silver dimes, of course I will. That Federal Reserve is raping us good, man. So there's a lot of good people out there when you strike up conversations. And so I wanted to explore alternative institutions. And I knew there was a lot of people that didn't want to participate in government, that wanted to opt out to varying degrees. We call these people agorists, right? Revolutionary market anarchism. But one of the things that holds people back, myself included, is the fear of violence, harm, having your property taken away. And so I started to really center in on the importance of strength in numbers, right? The lone wolf sitting duck that's out there, the Irwin Schiff, for example, or the guy that's going at it alone, evading his taxes, disobeying regulations in the business, it's easier for him to get crushed. But what if there is 1,000 people? What if there was 10,000 people? What if there was 100,000 people that were ready and willing to opt out together? And not just to opt out, right? Because that's more of the defensive language, but more importantly, just to do our own thing, like what we're doing here today, right? There's no violence, there's no coercion, nobody's forcing anyone to do anything, and it's a very beautiful, harmonious thing. So I would like to replicate what we experience here today on a bigger scale, right? Whether it's us living together in intentional communities on big 100-acre properties, or the folks that have the 15 acres here or the 3 acres here, were networked in a confederation of like-minded agorist cadres. So that's what the Freedom Cell Network is all about. In 2014, it was just an idea. I had an inner cadre group, but it fell apart because of infighting, which is why I'm hyper conscious of group dynamics and how to overcome that and communication tactics. But at that point, I had 2 kids and I was an impoverished activist. There was actually a nonprofit that worked well for a year or so that I was working with, but I was going at it alone. And I shifted away from the activism and the front facing and doing radio news and podcasts and kind of went back to my business and to take care of my family. Well, fast forward, a good friend of mine, Derek Bros of the Conscious Resistance Network, he took the idea and just ran with it and exploded it and turned it into a global network. Built this really cool website we see behind us. And then when COVID happened, my business was doing well. And since COVID happened, my business has continued to do well, which just shows like if you have the momentum, if you have the right mindset, you can create your own economy that's not dependent on the state of the economy outside of you. And so I had the opportunity to get back into it. And by now the group was growing. When I started getting back into activism in this regard and promoting it, there was like 1,000 people. And I remember it would be like, we hit 2,000, we hit 3,000. Now we have over 6,000 people participating. So it's not just an idea, it is a living organism, a living society. And essentially what we're trying to do is create our own free society while the existing framework crumbles around us. And so let me just show you real quick how cool this is. So this is the member map. I strongly invite everyone to sign up on the website at freedomcells.org. Remember, if we're all on the list, there is no list. All these people are on this list here. It's a lot of people. So each one of these dots represents a member that's participating in the network. And so if you can see, as you can see, the network here in Texas is pretty damn strong. Houston has a whole lot of people. That's where Derrick Broze is from. There's Central Texas right there. DFW is definitely leading the way. There's a really strong couple groups over out east. And what's that? Yeah, Tennessee's doing good too. And so one of the things I want to do at the end is get folks to kind of congregate in their area. Nicole set up a Tennessee Telegram chat. There's a Greater Texas Telegram chat. There's also a DFW area Telegram chat. So I want us to go away working together to organize, right? Because there's a network here and a community here. But one of the things that we offer with the Freedom Cell Network is this really great organizational structure, which I'm going to talk about here in a second. Here, let me pull over to Tennessee real quick. Where is she? Going too far north here? There's Kentucky. There's Tennessee right there. So there's a pretty good amount of people there too. So the cool thing about the website, you go on, you put your address or an address at the park down, maybe don't put your home address, but the park down the road or the coffee shop down the road, and then you can see and link up with people. And here's the catch. If there's no one in your area, people are like, there's no one in my area. You guys aren't doing a good enough job. But really what that means is that we need you to be a leader and help find other people in your area. Okay, so let me talk about where things are right now and where things are going, right? Because there's a lot of talk in this community about collapse and stuff. I should say the title of this talk is Freedom Cells, Living Free if Times Get Bad or even if they don't. So there's a lot of talk about collapse. And back in 2006 is when I started focusing on collapse a lot and was like all freaked out and sketched out, need to bug out. The economy's going to collapse. Well, a couple of years later, it didn't collapse, but it was a shit show. And I always remember something stuck with me. I'd tell my dad, you got to get your money out of the stock market. It's going to collapse. You got to get into gold and silver. And he said, John, I could go up in the attic and grab a book, How to Profit from the Upcoming Collapse. It was written in 1978. And that really stuck with me. It's like, maybe I'm exaggerating. But then I realized, like, it's all part of the same collapse. It's just kicking the can down the road. And one of these days, the chicken's going to come home to roost. That's what I thought. Now I have a different theory that I'm going to share with you. So we deserve better. The status quo of a centralized government, especially a strong federal government all the way in Washington, D.C., whether it's Trump or Biden or whoever the president, this isn't an ideal way to live. And I'm sure folks, if you're on social media, you recognize there's a whole lot of division and hate and nastiness. And I know we're not that ridiculous, but there's like families that are being broken apart because one supports Trump, one supports Biden. Everybody's all worked up. And one of the reasons for this is that we have a system where it's like one size fits all. This group gets in power and they force their views on everyone else. This group's in power, they force their views on everyone else, whether you agree with it or not. It doesn't work. Not to mention, there's an income tax that usurps money from everyone except for the agorists, like our buddy Sal. And it uses it to fund a really violent military war machine that's not a defensive or protect freedom thing. It's a hegemony, multinational corporation, international bankers. We have a police state that's growing increasingly scary at home. And there's this crazy left-right thing where my Ron Paul crew that was like the Department of Homeland Security, we're like 9/11 truthers. The Department of Homeland Security is basically the Gestapo. Fast forward several years and they're like, hell yeah, Trump, send in the Department of Homeland Security paramilitary forces to go suppress these protests. It's like, wait a second, hold on now. There's a lot of nastiness going on. and there's like this creeping threat of communism, and we're like just checking off planks in the Communist Manifesto in this country. So that's where things are now. And it's not just the federal government. The state and local governments are extremely onerous as well. Even here in Texas, which is relatively free compared to some other places. Tennessee is a relatively free state, as is Florida. But I'm not looking to compare myself to North Korea. Like everyone's like, you don't like this country, then why don't you go to North Korea or whatever? It's like, no, that's setting the bar kind of low. I even think that what we have with the United States constitutional experiment, I think is setting the bar low too. I'm not a big fan of the Constitution. A lot of people think it created this great environment for freedom to flourish. I'm a bigger fan of the Declaration of Independence and the original rebels. But the group of people that signed the Constitution, a lot of them were bankers, lawyers, aristocrats, elitists. And really what they did was create the largest central government that's ever existed. And because you have that relative economic freedom, it's created an environment where the government can extract a whole lot of resources to do all sorts of dirty, nasty things. So already things are bad, but I'm not going to say they're getting worse. They're going to get worse for some people, but not us, because we're going to carve our little sovereignty out of there. So I want to share a little bit about Agenda 21 and the Great Reset. And these are some of the reasons why the Freedom Cell Network is more important now than ever, and why it's exploded in popularity and interest, right? Who's familiar with Agenda 21? Okay, cool. A lot of folks are. That's great. Agenda 21 is a document that was signed in 1992 at the United Nations Earth Summit in Rio de Janeiro, Brazil. It essentially is a document that leverages concerns about environmentalism and sustainability in order to dramatically shift the way people are governed, the way businesses operate. It wants to use sustainability in order to enact all sorts of controls. Now, here's the problem with these United Nations guys and the World Economic Forum. I'll talk about it in a sec. A lot of their writing makes it seem all peachy and it has this nice veneer, like it's so much a beautiful thing. How can we possibly be against sustainability, right? This is real sustainability over here, not this bogus corporate top-down stuff. So that's Agenda 21. One of the things that came out of Agenda 21 was this concept of the Wildlands Project, where they want humans to be herded into compact cities. And the Wildlands Project has this map. Someone did a simulation of what it would be like. All the humans are in these compact cities that are black dots. And they want to re-wild the earth, a significant portion of the population. They want 30% of the earth to be off limits to humans. That's just a start. That's what they want to do by 2030. 30% by 2030. 2030 is a huge year I'm going to talk about, which means we need to really get it together, because they're going to shift the way the world operates, so are we, right? And so those areas are off human use. So there's going to be public transportation that connects everything, right? Agenda 21 wants to dramatically alter the concept of private property, essentially eliminating it altogether. They want to implement carbon taxes and cap and trade and use carbon as a currency, essentially, or a financial instrument. People bet on carbon emissions and the company can do this or that. So that's Agenda 21. More recently, they updated it to Agenda 2030 and the Sustainable Development Goals. So this has already been taking place. George H.W. Bush signed off on it, and he's about as insider as it gets. Former CIA, his grandfather, Prescott Bush, or his dad, was involved in the Nazi movement, all sorts of stuff. International bankers, they're all tied in. It wasn't ratified by the Senate, right? And so what a lot of these globalists do, right? I've been a student of the conspiratorial view of history for quite some time. And what they do is they recognize they can't go direct, just we're going to totally usurp the Constitution, we're going to take over the country, right? They're not visible with their stuff, although it is an open conspiracy because you can read it and research it. What they do is they do an end run around. And instead of going to the federal government or the Congress to pass legislation, like the Green New Deal, which is the essence of Agenda 21, they go to local governments. Like there's this group called the International Council of Local Environmental Initiatives, and they get local governments to buy into stuff. They used to call it Local Agenda 21, but there's this document from 2005, and it's giving these sustainability people advice. And they're like, we used to call it Local Agenda 21, but then we get John Birch Society people and conservatives and militia types that were all upset about it. So now we call it comprehensive planning. That's what they do. And so this is all in the works, right? And we see this coming to being, and there's all sorts of pressure and all sorts of legislation that's getting passed, and not just legislation, but like codes and edicts and stuff. So that's already going down. Well, now there's this new concept of the Great Reset. Who's heard of the World Economic Forum's Great Reset? So essentially all it is a pretty sophisticated marketing plan to change the way the world works. And one of the big things about the Great Reset is called the Fourth Industrial Revolution, right? So you had the factories and technology and information, this evolution of commerce and business and capitalism. Well, the Fourth Industrial Revolution is the economies of technology merging with biology. One of the concepts is called surveillance capitalism, where data will be traded, where just about every single aspect of our lives will be tracked and traced. This is where we see social credit scores coming into play. And oftentimes what takes place in communist China is essentially like a proving ground for how to roll it out with the rest of the world, as is Australia and New Zealand. But thankfully, we got some really brave guys over here holding it down in Australia. So like we think it's tough for us to do this kind of stuff here. Imagine being these guys. Now there was at one point a little bitty dot in North Korea, but then all of a sudden it vanished for some reason. I don't know what happened there. There's never a dot in North Korea. Maybe someday though. So the Great Reset, to get an idea of what they want, this is the World Economic Forum. They're the guys that meet every year in Davos, right? They're called like the Davos superclass, all these oligarchs that really care about the little guy. And they use sustainability as one of their buzzwords. And they use poverty. They really want to help out poverty. But they're like billionaire superclass type folks. So this is one of their propaganda pieces from their website. This stuff comes out on their website, but they also get it in Washington Post and stuff. So listen how nice this sounds. The title is, "Welcome to 2030. I own nothing, have no privacy, and life has never been better." This is their website. So check it out. "Welcome to the year 2030. Welcome to my city," or should I say our city. "I don't own anything. I don't own a car. I don't own a house. I don't own any appliances or any clothes." Might seem odd to you, but it makes perfect sense for us in this city. Everything you considered a product has now become a service. We have access to transportation, accommodation, food, and all the things we need in our daily lives. One by one, all these things became free. No such thing as a free lunch. So it ended up not making sense for us to own much. Wow. And so for a lot of, I like to use this for people that are like, that sounds like a conspiracy. They don't want to have this panopticon surveillance society and take away our private property rights. It's like, yeah, that's exactly what they want to do. And their big goal is 2030. I did an interview with this woman who was a professor at Tulsa University. There's a really strong Freedom Cell network in the Tulsa area. And she learned at her tenure with Tulsa, a very brief tenure, because she's like us, they cut her out of there. She started noticing all these weird words and all these weird new concepts. And she came to understand that one of the mechanisms they're rolling out, again, an end run around passing the law through Congress or signing into a treaty, is they leverage tax-exempt foundations. If people study conspiracy and stuff, they're familiar with the Rockefeller Foundation and the role that they played in killing naturopathic and Eastern medicine and ushering in an era of allopathic medicine, making it seem like all that other stuff is quackery, right? They also changed the frequency of music to this. They like did studies and found, let's get the most abrasive musical frequency and let's have all the instruments tuned to that. What's up with these guys? They're the ones that are behind monocropping too, through the Rockefeller Foundation, the advent of monocropping. It's like, we're gonna feed the whole world. And really they just destroyed the soil, so much damn soil. So they're not good guys. But these tax-exempt foundations, there's this new form of eco-fascism, surveillance data capitalism that's coming into play. And this is why earlier I used to think there was going to be this collapse, right? And eventually the chickens are going to come home to roost. Well, these clever fuckers, they are creating an environment where there, I believe, is going to be a smooth transition away from the existing way of finance capitalism and all these nations in debt and individuals in debt. They're going to reset that, transition us into this new paradigm where instead of profit being a value or earnings for shareholders, they're going to roll out stakeholder capitalism, where the stakeholder is everyone in the community, right? And again, that sounds like a nice peachy thing. We should be caring about the school across the street if we're running the commercial enterprise over here. But they want to dramatically shift things around. They want to turn carbon into a tradable commodity. This is already happening. They want to use their tax-exempt foundations to do what's called impact investing. So in Tulsa, Oklahoma, billionaire tax-exempt foundations invest billions of dollars in what's called a P20 pipeline, preschool to PhD. They invest, impact investing, and they say, we want to see in the future the robotics, the AI, drone industries. Drones are a big part of their thing because they want to have drones in the sky constantly surveilling everything. We want to see the drone industry thrive here in Tulsa, Oklahoma, of all places. So we're going to invest hundreds of millions of dollars, impact investing, and we're going to make bets that the workforce through preschool, elementary school, secondary in the Tulsa, Oklahoma University, they're going to be massaged and milked to become these pawns, essentially, for the fourth industrial revolution. And how they're going to really further that is they're actually creating financial markets where you can long and short, you could place bets on the success of this contract, of this impact investment. So there's tons of money that's coming in betting. And this is how they're shifting the way that society operates essentially right now. In Austin, there's this Austin Office of Technology, and there's another tax-exempt foundation that's investing money in what's called MyPass. They're going to go to the homeless people. Again, it's all about poverty. First, they roll it out for the homeless and they protect the environment. And when everyone have a blockchain digital ID, it's a huge paradox with blockchain because it's simultaneously can liberate us. It's also used to enslave the population. So they want to get all of the homeless folks, when they get their inoculation for the COVID vaccine, they're going to have all of their benefits on this blockchain-based ID. It's called MyPass. That's another form of impact investing. This is all taking place right now. So not only do we have to deal with the existing paradigm of terrible tyranny, which already sucked, but we have this world coming into being. And it's not just a theory, and it's not something that they could do. I believe that they will do this. And the important thing is for us to understand what they're doing, not so we can freak out or go scream, and I got the documents right here, but so we can figure out how we can strategically overcome that, insulate ourselves, and carve out our little piece of the pie. And I believe the Freedom Cell Network is a very valuable tool to do just that. Now check this out. Here's where we come in. There's a little section here. They live different kinds of lives outside of the city. This really spoke to me, this paragraph. My biggest concern is all the people who do not live in our city. Those we lost on the way. Those who decided that it became too much, all this technology. Those who felt obsolete and useless when robots and AI took over big parts of our jobs. Those who got upset with the political system and turned against it. They live different kinds of lives outside of the city. Some have formed little self-supplying communities. Others just stayed in the empty and abandoned houses in small 19th century villages. Once in a while, I get annoyed about the fact that I have no real privacy, nowhere I can go and not to be registered. I know that somewhere everything I do, think, and dream of is recorded. That's like the Neuralink with Elon Musk. I just hope that nobody will use it against me. So this is us. They're referring to us, right? And I'd like to think that they'll just let us do our thing. It won't be like communists line them against the wall. But who knows? We need to be prepared for both scenarios. So that's what we're facing. And now I want to share how the Freedom Cell Network can help insulate us from that. And more importantly, how the Freedom Cell Network is a better way for humans to relate to one another. We deserve better. So the Freedom Cell Network, in a nutshell, is all about small groups of people working together. I was going to use this more, but I'm just going to stop. For mutual aid, mutual defense, and achieving common goals. It's really what it's all about. There's no like agenda or initiatives. We don't want to rebuild all the infrastructure and stuff. It's just this blank idea. It's open source too. People can take it and run with it. And so however the Freedom Cell Network or this framework can benefit you and your community, you and your family, you and your children, people can take it and run with it however they want. So you have an inner cadre group is the core of it. This is a group of around 8 people you trust, you've vetted them, family, associates, you've known them for a while. This is your little inner crew, right? You work together on common goals. This is why it's an easy pitch to this crowd, because the first 4 goals we always encourage people to do are to have 3 months of food storage. I used to say 2 weeks, and then COVID happened. I was like, nah, 3 months, right? And for some of you guys, you're like, 3 months, that's nothing. But it's kind of a difficult goal, especially if you live in a 399 square foot tiny house. So strive towards 3 months of food storage. Everyone should have an encrypted form of communication. Telegram doesn't have group encrypted communication, I should say, although a lot of people are on it. We're not talking about overthrowing the government. I'm not an overthrow the government or smash the state kind of guy. I don't think the government's going anywhere. I'm a how can we coexist with the statists and have them stay off our backs, right? So encrypted communication, and I would say off-grid communication. It's like ham radio, some lofty goal, but here we are. Ham radio is already rocking and rolling. The guys in Tulsa are doing ham radio as well, or they're starting to do it. That's the second goal, encrypted or off-grid communication. The third goal is to have firearms and know how to use them safely and proficiently in defense of yourself, your family, and your community. You guys are already checking off all these, most everyone in the room. And then the fourth goal is to have a bug out plan. Whether you bug out with your group of 8, maybe one of them has a ranch out in South Texas or something, or you bug out separately, just all hold each other accountable and make sure you're working on those goals. That's usually where we start with those goals. But it doesn't have to go there, right? You can have a group of families that are like, we're fed up with public schools. We want to homeschool our kids, but we can't do it alone because we both work or whatever. So you get your 8 families. Doesn't have to be 8. I'll talk about why 8 in a second. And you're like, well, we're going to chip in to buy the curriculum. Nancy and Tom are going to take lead on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. Judy and Billy are going to take lead on Tuesday, Thursday, right? So that's one of the goals, buy curriculum, come up with a schedule. Every Friday, we take the kids to a museum or some social outing. And then every week, we do an accountability meeting with the parents to check in, see what we're doing, plan for the future week. Maybe it's a group of people that are interested in business. You can have a mastermind. We're going to go to this conference together. We're going to do this audio book project together. We're going to check in with each other on our goals, so on and so forth, right? Maybe it's a health group. We're all going to do keto. We're going to hold each other accountable. We're going to jog every day. We're going to plan our diets together, right? So you can really do anything you want with the Freedom Cell Network, and the magic is this small group. So why the number 8? Well, there was a guy named John David Garcia who did a whole lot of research. Another guy was Bob Podolsky. He's more prominent in the liberty community. This guy, John David Garcia's highest ethic was creativity. My highest ethic is freedom. And he found through study and research with groups over like 20 years or 30 years that 8 is the optimal number of people to have maximum creativity. So you have 15 people, it starts to get bureaucratic. People aren't on the same page. They don't know one another. If you have 4 people, there's not enough ideas. There's not enough action. So we like to strive towards 8. It doesn't have to be 8. It could be 9. It could be 7. Really, it could be whatever the hell you want with it. That's just what we encourage. So you have your group of 8. You're vibing with each other. Life's better because you're working together, right? Ideally, this group is close in geographic proximity. Well, here's where we expand the network. You start encouraging other people to form these Freedom Cell groups, and you link up with 7 other groups of 8. Now you have what we call a middle cadre, which is approximately 64 people. Or maybe you already have a big group, like around 80 people sitting together in this cool workshop, and you can go from the bigger group, the middle cadre, how can we split up? All right, these folks are in Tennessee, these folks are in DFW, these folks are in Arkansas. You can go from a middle cadre and then form out the groups. Maybe you don't link up necessarily on geographic proximity. Maybe you link up with the permaculture guys that want to learn more about that. Maybe the families link up together, right? So the cool thing about the middle cadre group, one of the things that they were doing in the DFW area, they're like, let's create some trade routes. It's a big ass metroplex. Folks that live far east, instead of going all the way to drop off the tools or the money or whatever, or the contraband, the kratom, we can meet at our friend's house in the middle. They can go pick up, right? When you have a group of 64 people, there's a lot that you can accomplish. Now, here's where it goes even further. You then link up the middle cadre with other middle cadres and form what we call a meta cadre. So check it out. This is Texas. I should say, while this 6,000 dots does look pretty cool and sexy, not all of the 6,000 people are super active. A lot of people are like, I'll sign up on the website and then post a bunch of stuff and share videos. It's like, that's not what this is about, but whatever. So imagine this is a middle cadre group in this Austin area, around 64 people. Right now we have an inner cadre group that I'm part of, and then there's a couple other that are forming. Houston area has a couple inner cadre groups, so we'll call that a middle cadre. DFW has a few inner cadre groups, so that's a middle cadre. These groups form up together to have what we call a meta cadre of around 512 people, 8 groups of 64, right? The cool thing about this framework, and why I think it's an innovative way for humans to organize themselves and relate to one another, is that as the network scales in number, it remains horizontal. So the way that the government, it's not my government, I don't like to be part of it unless I'm coerced into participating. That's why I don't vote. My policy is like, if they force me to do something, or I'm under threat, or it's gonna like inconvenience me to get pulled over because I don't have tags, maybe I'll consider complying. But if there's no consequences, I guess someone could say, well, Joe Biden's the consequence, but whatever.
And that's your fault, mine too.
That's right. That's
We
right.
did it.
They're both chumps. Trump's a chump too. It's just a different flavor of chump.
Orange.
Orange soda, Cheeto flavor. So the cool thing is, well, the system that we have, the system that's in place now is centralized and vertical. It's not horizontal. There's a group of people up here that have a whole lot of power. Then they have the Congress, then they have the bureaucrats. Of course, the central bankers, the international bankers, and the secret shadowy elite are really the ones that are pulling the puppets. And then the people, the peons, are way down at the bottom. It's totally vertical. This network can grow, can make large-scale decisions, can pull together resources and money, can communicate in emergency situations effectively to aid one another. And as it grows, it remains horizontal. So, for example, let's say in Austin, we have an intercadre group. That's all we got. Everyone that joins becomes a part of the intercadre group in the beginning, and then we split off. Well, now we have around 64 people. So, okay, there's more people. Let's organize ourselves into these 8 groups of 8. Well, now more people join in the city of Austin. It essentially just stretches out. There's this biological term, autopoiesis, which is like a cell that replicates itself and continues to keep that form. So as you grow in the city of Austin, now we just have a metacadre group, right? The cool thing is your intercadre group, you're super closely connected. But just because you're not as connected as you are with the intercadre group to the middle cadre group doesn't mean that you're still not connected, or you still don't have a Telegram group where you keep in touch. It's just these are the guys maybe y'all meet weekly or you touch base weekly. The group of 64, you touch base monthly, for example. Or maybe annually we get the whole state of Texas together for our metacadre group, right? And then eventually as we expand, and again, one of the things that I've been doing as I got back involved is trying to do conference calls, events. We did one in Spavinaw, Oklahoma, Houston, Austin. This is considered a Freedom Cell talk, right? We're having these little summits. I want to focus on organizing the network into this infrastructure. Whenever you have multiple metacadres linked up, I like to call it the Confederation of Freedom Cells, right? Now let me talk about some of the cool stuff that we can do. On the defensive end, this big technocracy, that's what the elites want to create, a technocracy. It means rule through technology and rule by experts. There's this concept that came about in the 30s and the 40s as a reaction to the Depression. And all these scientists and experts were like, politicians really suck at governing. We should govern, right? If anyone's heard of resource-based economy and that stuff, this is essentially what that is. Well, the technocracy wants to leverage technology in order to control people. And one of the things that we see on the horizon, it's not a conspiracy theory, is a COVID immunity passport. All right, Bill Gates did this Reddit thing, and he does these interviews. He's like, well, before we go back to the new normal, then we're going to have these digital immunity certificates. Somebody was poking fun of me because I always talk with my hands. They're like, that's just what Bill Gates does. And his last name's Bush. Wait a second. You know how many people are still like, oh, I like what you're saying, but your last name's Bush, so I don't know. Fucking break, come on now. So, yeah, if I'm a Fed, we're all fucked. And I live in Texas. Although, misnomer, Bush is never from Texas. He was from Connecticut. So lead us from Connecticut, a Yankee. Okay, so no offense to anyone in Connecticut. But yes, offense to those of us in Texas. What they want to do, so the thought of a mandatory vaccine for COVID always gets talked about, but I don't think that's their path. Really, the law journals, the New England Journal of Medicine, they say we shouldn't do a mandatory vaccine because if you put a penalty on it or a crime, that could elicit problems in the courts when people stand up and fight against it. So instead, what we should do, essentially what they want to do is take away what they see as privileges. So there's already something called the Common Pass, which is what the World Economic Forum is behind. Gates is invested in it, the Rockefellers, the Bill Gates Foundation, Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. We already see in California, Ticketmaster is working on Common Pass technology to where before you go to a concert, you have to prove that you had a negative test in the past few days or you have your COVID vaccine certificate. We also see airlines like Delta and some of these conglomerations are starting to experiment with this technology. We also have talk of you can't work with your employer unless you have a COVID immunity pass, green light. This is taking place already in China and Singapore. They're starting to roll it out in the UK already. So essentially what they want to do is compel people to obey with their edicts and what they want us to do by taking away privileges. Blockchain technology works a lot in this. You have your digital identity at birth. That's how you buy and sell, mark of the beast style. They can turn that off. But also they send tokens. So if you're green lit to travel on public transportation, big part of Agenda 21, they want to disincentivize and ultimately eliminate private automobiles. Because when you're cruising, right? Somebody I was talking to who's got the Corvette from Illinois. That's a free man right there driving down the highway. You know, you can turn left, you can turn right, you can stop to pee, you can do whatever the hell you want, right? Unless there's border checkpoints. Thank God we don't have internal border checkpoints yet. Not yet. But if they do away with the automobile, you're forced into public transportation to go visit your grandma or go to work, then they can say, oh, his social credit score dipped below 60, right? We rate your social credit score 40 out of 100. So they send in a token that says you're not authorized to travel public transportation, or you're not authorized to travel to these places. You can only go to work or whatever. That's what we're facing. The Freedom Cell Network aims to create an environment where, for example, if they say you don't have your green light on your COVID Common Pass app, so you can't go to the grocery store. It's like, I hadn't been to the grocery store in 6 months. We created our own resilient food network. This guy's got the ducks over here. This guy's got the garden over here. We got the seed bank over here. We got the permaculture expert in the back. We don't go to the grocery store, right? We want to create an environment where it's difficult and impossible for them to compel us into complying with their bullshit. Same thing. Oh, well, I have a big job with a big corporation. We were talking about the mask stuff and all the HR stuff, right? It's like, well, they can go to the big corporation and say, unless they have the COVID pass, unless they have this credit score or that, then they can't be employed. We have our own agorist network of people working together. We hire one another. Many of us are entrepreneurs. We have our own trade. We have our own Monero or a digital currency they can't shut off. That's what this is all about. That's exactly what we're trying to do here. But as I said earlier, it's not just about a defensive posture, which is important. More importantly, it's about how can we live in a manner that's more in line with our free sovereignty, our freedom as free human beings. But there's a lot of overlap. So when we talk about mandatory vaccine, Jack often brings up one of the mechanisms that they can use is they'll increase your insurance premiums if you don't have COVID immunity or take the vaccine, which makes sense from a business perspective, right? Also from a diabolical Illuminati perspective, it makes sense. But how about this? I personally have a health share. It's called Zion Health Share. It costs $208. If there's an emergency, it's covered 100%, except I pay out of pocket up to $1,000. It's like $1,000 deductible. This works for me. I don't have chronic ailments. I don't even have an MD. I don't have a primary care physician. I go to my naturopath. I don't take pharmaceuticals, right? So it's a good thing for me. So what I would like to do, and what we can do with this network, let's imagine that we have 10,000 people organized in the Freedom Cell Network, and they're all part of the intercadre, middle cadre, meta cadre framework. Well, there's a way that we can make decisions based on consensus without having a congressperson have to vote on our behalf or whatever. So let's say we have 10,000 people. The health insurance sucks anyway, besides this pressure point, right? It's totally bloated. It was before Obamacare. Now it's even worse. Trump ain't going to fix it if he gets in again. And so we can have our group of 10,000. We can say, you know what? I think that we've scaled to the point where we can all contribute and we can form our own health share company. Whether we go ahead and do it legit and form an LLC or a corporation, a legal entity that the members own, maybe it's cooperative, or we do a smart contract, agorist-based one, whatever. That's something to decide. It might be better to do it a legit style. I don't know. But we can then go to the network and someone can say, hey, I have an idea. I'd like to do this. Here's the proposal. Who wants to get on board? And then you send out the message alert system to the network and everyone essentially votes. We want to participate. We're willing to contribute X dollars a month. And now we're like, wow, this is a viable idea. We can essentially create our own health share. So what we're doing is becoming self-sufficient from the government, right? Another thing that we can do when we reach a good sized number, this is when I lose some people, but I don't think I'll lose this crowd. In the New Libertarian Manifesto by Samuel Edward Konkin, this was the first iteration of agorism, revolutionary market anarchism. It talks about these different phases of agorist society. Phase 0 is zero density agorism, 100% statism, right? Phase 1 is small little isolated pockets of agorists and everything else is statist, right? And as you transition, there becomes bigger agorist cadres, even since there's agorist ghettos, right? And there's all these, imagine a bunch of eco-villages and intentional communities. And, you know, Samuel Edward Konkin passed away, but I think he would be really excited and happy to see what's grown out of agorism, right? I think Jack Spirko was probably a huge, like, agorisms like this, and then Jack starts talking about, it's like, because it's still a pretty little niche thing, right? It's not very mainstream at all, but it's gonna be. And so he talked about whenever you have phase 0 density or phase 1 density, you don't want to go toe to toe using violence against the state, right? He's not an offensive guy. I'm not an offensive guy. I'm not a overthrow. I'm not a let's get the militia and go monitor the vote, or like let's go toe to toe at the Congress building. It's not like that. That's not what this is about. But he does say when it comes to defense, we could have private defense agencies. So instead of, obviously the first line of defense is everyone being armed, knowing how to use the arms safely and proficiently, right? Not just having a gun, but knowing how to use it. But the next line of defense is, just as we polled the network of 100,000, does everyone want to contribute to a health share program? We poll the network and say, does everyone want to contribute to a private security agency? Or let's say here in Austin, obviously it's good to be local. We have 6,000 people. Half of them decided they want to contribute to private security that comes in and checks on them, that you can call. Instead of calling 911, you call the agorist number for our private security that we've hired, right? Now this all, maybe there's a national company that we get a premium and there's little pockets, the pockets that have developed to the point where they can afford it, where they're ready to take that leap, right? And now here's where this comes into play. When we have a good enough number of people and we have private security would certainly help. It's not necessary. That's when we're like, you know what? How about we poll the network of 1 million people, which isn't unfathomable, and we say, are you guys ready to declare your independence from the state together, collectively at the same time? And we all opt out of paying the property tax, opt out of the income tax, all the regulation, right? Doesn't have to go this far. Again, this is where I lose some people. There could be the inner cadre, that's the knitting club, and you don't have to get all hardcore with the private security and opting out, right? But I like to envision things and help to manifest them. So that's where I'm going in my head. I want to see that we have a strong enough group of people where we can opt out. And get this, the whole time, we're not like the sketchy weirdos living out in the shack and like marching through town with our paramilitary gear. No, we're active members of the community. We sell ducks to the restaurant down the street. We do, when there's a hurricane, our group and our organization goes and helps and aids, right? We're embedded in the network. We're not weirdos. We're not violent. We're not crazy.
We're the techno Amish.
We're the techno Amish, the techno agorist Amish. And so the beauty of it is, it may not even be that we have to formally opt out. It could be that over the course of the next years, we've de facto opted out. Because not only have we built our own health care systems and health insurance, health shares, and defense, and we have the older wise folks that form a tribunal arbitrary council that help us negotiate and settle conflicts and disputes, right? And we have our own food production systems, and we have our own homeschool cooperatives and unschools and all sorts of other things. We essentially haven't been participating in the system for quite some time. It's just that leap with the property tax obviously is a big one, as is the income tax. So it's all about taking steps to get from here to there. And that's something that's been really important for me. So that's what the Freedom Cell Network is all about. Again, the status quo right now is pretty fucking terrible. And it's not something I want my children to grow up in. I want them to experience freedom that I never experienced. They don't have social security numbers, so they got a leg up on me. That's a good start for them. But not only is stuff terrible now, and the status quo of this federal government and state governments and all this communism creeping in, that's really bad. But as I talked about Agenda 21 and the Great Reset and this panopticon surveillance society, that's going to happen. So I want to invite you guys to join myself, join the network, help us grow this network so we can carve out our little area outside of the city without being crushed by the man. That's my presentation. So we got like 12 minutes left. If anybody has any questions, thoughts, and then we don't have to do it now because I know there's another talk. But I'd love for Nicole set up a Tennessee group. There's a Texas group. I'd like for us to talk. This group's already connected and networked, but I'd like if you guys would consider joining the website, linking up with the existing. There's 6,000 people, and these are all like-minded people. It's libertarians. There's even Libertarian Party people. There's permaculture people. There's agorists. There's crypto cypherpunks. It's a great conglomeration of people, and I think you guys could really add a lot of value to the network, and I think the network could add a lot of value to you. So I'm going to drop those groups in the Telegram chat for this event, and then if there's someone in Arkansas or Illinois or wherever, if there's not yet a Telegram chat group for your area, I invite you to create one, and then let's share it with each other. And then again, you go to freedomcells.org, put an address down the street, and see if there's already some existing action in your area. If you live in a densely populated area, chances are there's already some people that are there. There may already be some existing cells. Yes?
One of the last things you just said was very interesting. You said your children had a leg up on you because they did not have social security numbers. How did you do that?
Well, they were both birthed at home. So we just, the question was, how did we do no social security numbers for the kids? It's really like, how did we not do it? We just didn't do anything. So there's no requirement that you have to have a social. And it's funny because I was telling my dad and stuff that he's with it. He worked at my bookstore that I operated for a little while and like had all these crazy conspiracy theories gab at him for 2 years. But he's like, John, I don't think that's what if they need to open a bank account or whatever. And I always said, this was back in 2010, 2011, when my first child was born. You know, by the time they come of age where they're ready to do business and commerce, there's going to be some kind of radical currency that we've created where they don't have to have a bank or a social. Bitcoin already existed at that point. I hadn't heard about it yet, but a couple years later, I was like, well, there it is right there. They don't need a social to do business. And here's the thing. It's a very low risk activity. If the kids are like, you and mom are fucking weird, dad. Why are y'all so obsessed with this freedom stuff? I just want to have a normal life. My daughter says that sometimes when we're like, we're not wearing the mask and we're going to sneak around stuff with all this bullshit COVID stuff. And I tell them I have a medical exemption. My daughter's like, can't we just have a normal life? I was like, if you had a normal life, you'd be vaccinated, you'd be in public school, yada, yada, you know, we wouldn't be able to take these random trips in the middle of the week to Universal Studios, you know? So, but if they want to have a social, they can get a social when they're 12 or 15 or 16. And that's the beauty of this network. So maybe it's like, well, there are some banks or credit unions that don't require social. Federally, the social security number is only supposed to be used for social security, right? This big giant Ponzi scheme. But as we grow our agorist network, maybe my kids never have to do business with the Statist Great Reset Network. They're outside of that system doing business with you guys, right? And the more people we have that are of like mind participating in this manner, the more resilient the network becomes, the more opportunity there is to not participate with the existing paradigm. Yes?
Besides word of mouth and groups like this, how are you marketing or where are you on the social media platforms or somewhere that's getting the word out of marketing?
Well, who's familiar with Derek Rose and the Conscious Resistance Network? This guy's a freaking machine, and he has a huge network and a huge following, and he's growing it, doing interviews on the Corbett Report, if you're familiar with James Corbett. Myself, I'm pounding away on my podcast. I did an interview with Tom Woods about Freedom Cells. That had a big explosion of interest. We talked about it on the Goose. Jack references. I talk about it on Jack's show. So that's me and Derek are like the main promoters of it. But really where the magic is word of mouth. And so we need, a lot of people always look to us and they're like, well, why isn't there something in my area? And it's like, well, you need to ask yourself that question. And so what's really important is if you vibe with this idea, if you gain value from it, it needs to grow on a grassroots level. Oh, yeah.
If I want to introduce it to someone, is there like a place I can point to where they get a primer if they don't know anything about this?
Yeah, there's a freedomcells.org has some videos on the front page. And the front page doesn't talk about private security syndicates and stuff like that. So it's good. Yeah. It's a good start. Yeah, Nicole.
Okay, so one of the biggest mistakes I see the liberty movement doing is they're attempting to go top down to spread liberty rather than let it happen organically. This is a very organic approach. You're kind of like taking this idea of what Uber did to the taxis and just trying to do it 100%.
Yeah, with governance.
So I think it would be worth, it's more of a comment than a question, but I'd love your feedback on it. It'd be worth spending some time figuring out a best practice for cells to tap into, or if it's better in like the example of the health share, if you're is it better to do that just privately, figure it out, screw regulations so that we have doctors who will operate within that and it never has to go through the regulated environment, or if you want to tap in, because a health share cannot be formed that's new right now. It's illegal according to the Affordable Care Act. If you were not already sharing before 1999, you can't do it. The workaround for that is you partner with one that did exist if you want to set up a separate one.
We could do that too.
But is it worth all of that, or is it better just to, like, and this is a question that would be interesting to discuss, is it better just to set
What
up
if
your
it's a
system
live
so you don't
share
have to
that
give a fuck
happens
about
to
what the
cover
Affordable
health?
Care Act says about your health share, right?
So that is, real quick before I forget, the cool thing about I share this because it's funny, but I think it makes people afraid. But originally the Freedom Cell name came as a joke on Terracell because I knew that the government would be like, what are you guys doing, blah, blah. Not anything about terrorism. But all of a sudden people were like, oh, Freedom Cell, like cell in a body. And I was like, yeah, that's But that analogy works perfect because you have cells in your body, and the healthier these individual cells are, the healthier the whole is. The healthier the whole is, the better the cells are. These cells in our body learn and they educate the rest of the body, right? Like a cell learns how to fight a virus, right? And then that spreads through your immune system. So for us, the virus is government. And as individual groups learn how to opt out, or this communication worked better, or this firearm's a better firearm, and this strategy is better, the idea is that the network educates itself, right? I don't have the answer to your question. Ideally, it's agarist, smart contract, maybe crypto-based or whatever. But, you know, the thought of contributing money to something that's not official will cause some trepidation and hesitation. So I don't know the answer.
For a long time, and then they just
Sometimes you just do it, but also, like Jack talks about this a lot, it's like an inside-outside game. So maybe something as important as healthcare for someone, maybe that is a legit institution. Or maybe I go to the Zion Health Share company and say, I have 10,000 people, get us a group rate, right?
Well, what if we're just their customer?
Yeah.
Instead of being part of Zion Health, Freedom Cell Inc. is a customer.
Right.
Yeah.
A cluster that they
Well,
serve.
the Mennonites will
So
work
they
with
run it
us.
for you for some small percentage. They're under that radar. That'd be one way. The other way to do it is just fuck it. We're doing it.
Yeah.
If you can't do it, fuck off. We're doing it anyway.
Yeah.
That's a pretty hard. That's like
The
coming
fear-
down on people paying each other's medical bills. That's kind of like fucking with an Indian reservation. You could do it, but do you really want us to roll that little kid out in a chair and say, look what they're doing? They took it away.
At the press conference,
You
yeah.
want to use your shit like that on us?
The fear you have with this
Fuck with
for
my
people to
marketing.
join is that they're like, I have to work in the system because it's the only option, right? When
Well,
you're
you
able
say
to make that second option, then you're like, well, we got that.
Yeah, that's one of the things where people are like, my health plan is so good with my business. We want to create alternatives with my company I work for. We want to create alternatives where we make that jump easier. And that's originally how it all started out, with strength in numbers. How can we make it easier for people to opt out and not feel so afraid, right? Not be alone when you do it. And so if we already have all sorts of industry within our network, which we do, I like to make it a point to not talk about this as some speculative potential future. We're doing it right now. This is the Agora right now. And it's not just here, right, in East Fort Worth. It's all over the globe. And that's something for mindset, right? I want us to manifest this and already feel, don't focus on the tyranny or the Great Reset, although understand it, don't be naive about it. Let's focus on the freedom that we enjoy in our lives, because this is pretty fucking cool what a lot of people have going in this community, this movement. It's not just the liberty movement, it's agorist, crypto, permaculture, all sorts of stuff. Any other questions? We just have a few more minutes. Yes.
You had mentioned kind of like vetting people for your inner cadre. You'd also mentioned that some of the freedom cells aren't very active and stuff. Can you discuss kind of your experience of managing for that inner cadre? Because I can see setting up a cadre and then some people not really participating or not being interested in talking with you.
Yeah, so the Tulsa group is advanced. And I'll admit, like, I spend more time trying to grow the network than I do growing my inner cadre group, to my dismay, right? We do have a group, my girlfriend, my former roommate, and a couple other guys. We're all talking about having the same caliber ammunition, and we're gonna go, I hate this, but we're gonna go get our license to carry together, which is kind of like, wait a second, hold on. It's better to have it, you know, walking around and not need it. That's right. Yeah, you will.
He's on every damn list.
So, but in Tulsa, they've already experienced a friend of a friend got involved, and he started kind of attacking, and there was some, maybe I shouldn't share this publicly, but they are coming up with, the beauty again is the cells teach the other cells. So when there's conflict, we be open about it. We say, this is the conflict, here's how we resolved it, here's what we recommend for you guys, what do you experience? And so if it's random people that aren't already part of your crew, everyone already has the group that they go to the range with, or they do the perma blitzes with, right? That's a good place to start. But if it's like, I'm the only guy and there's a few other guys, the first thing is like, maybe go get a beer, maybe go to the coffee shop, start to build a relationship. There's some people that were like, I didn't like that guy, or we can't work with that guy. So it's all about experimenting and controlling, or learning about the other people. I did come up with this working manual. So it's got all sorts of advice on recruitment and the group dynamics and stuff. And one of the parts that we're gonna add is like vetting people, how to watch out for feds and stuff. There's a cool aspect as well, where let's say you have a group of 8, let's say you have 8 groups of 8, and 2 of the people in one of those groups are like total a-holes, right? They get all wasted and they turn into jerks. They pick fights with the other guys. They harass the women, right? So the group of 64, they do a regular monthly meetup, and these guys are always causing trouble. So there's this great mechanism of correction that we can utilize to keep because it's a private society, right? Not everyone is invited to participate. And so let's say these 2 guys are jerks. Well, the other groups, they go to one of the leaders or one of the guys that's more prominent in that group of 8, and they say, hey, look, Jerry the asshole and Charlie the dickhead, they're causing a lot of problems lately. So the first thing that I would like people to do is to try to work with people and help them. Maybe there's some trauma, maybe they need some healing, maybe some other people in the group struggle with alcohol and they've since quit, or they went to AA, or they did psychotherapy or whatever. So it's like, well, maybe we can go help them, right? But if that fails, ain't nobody got time for this shit, right? We're conscious people. We want to relate with conscious people. So you tell that freedom cell, here's what we're gonna do. Either you guys got to remove that group, those 2 guys from your group, or we're not going to disassociate from your cell altogether. That creates this little mechanism of incentives, where the other 6 people now have an incentive to either help this guy rehabilitate, become a better dudes, or kick him out of the group. And so there's that check in society. We don't have that in this status quo society, right? You have like these reactionary judges and courts and like punitive punishment and stuff. So there's a built-in way to help people first, and then if you can't help them, cut them out. I don't know if that answers your question, but you know, a lot of the answers to some of these questions are, I don't know. Let's figure it out together. You know, I've never built a society from the ground up before. It's my first time working on this kind of project. So, yes.
When you say 8 people, is that like literally 8 people, or like 8 households? Like if there's married couples or something like that?
Whatever works best for you. I don't know. It could be 8 people. It could be 4 families. It could be 8 families, and then there's like some teenage kids and stuff, and it ends up being a group of actually like 15 humans. It doesn't really matter. It's just, it's a flexible thing. What works best, 8 families, whatever. And then again, it's not a top-down thing. It's like, this is how we think it would work best. Let's try it, report back to one another with best practices. Yes?
This is a little more of a comment. I was doing the Atlanta Freedom Cells for a bit, and we didn't quite get to the part where we had inter-cadre debate, but we were basically like once a month going to like a bar or something, and everybody hanging out. And that way it was like we were kind of courting each other and finding people that were location-wise closer to us, and like people that we got along with and kind of liked, you know, so that way we could eventually sort of branch off and have our inter-cadre. It was kind of growing, so it wasn't like, you know, part of it for a few months, but it wasn't like in the first month we didn't really have enough people to start doing that, but like till pretty much just recently we kind of did have like enough people to like start figuring out like our eight people cells.
Yep. And you can go from a larger group and then break down into the smaller ones, or maybe the larger group functions just fine and just keep going with that. Again, it's real flexible. It's not rigid. Let's just all work together to figure out how to do it best. I got to wrap up so we can take a break and there's another speaker, but we can keep the conversation going throughout the event. I'll be here.
Cool.
Thank you, guys.
Badass, John.
Thanks.
Badass, John.
Into 21 rabbit hole.
It's a deep rabbit hole, huh?